Hey folks, how you doing? Well, I wanted to do the second part in this series by Christopher Rufo on the evidence that he's bringing forward. So much evidence of all the DEI programs at these top 10 companies. And not that it's just DEI, but it really demonstrates that DEI is just straight up racism and discrimination, period. And it's not hyperbole that they're teaching anti-whiteism, and all these things like that, and they're teaching that the United States is a white supremacist country, and that it is just embedded in this. And I really want to go into the Walmart thing because we did Google on the first one, and now this is to Walmart. So let's take a look at some of the stuff internally that's been provided to Christopher Rufo by whistleblowers who have sent this to Christopher Rufo. This is all the evidence he's gathered from their internal meetings and their struggle sessions, let's just call them. That's what communists like. Grievance politics, struggle sessions, hand-wringing, whatever you want to call it, but this is what it is. So it says that Walmart has launched a critical race theory training program. It's pretty bad. Let me highlight my mouse here. Okay. Walmart has launched a critical race theory training program that denounces the United States as a white supremacy system and teaches white hourly wage workers that they are guilty of quote-unquote white supremacy thinking and internalized racial superiority. Buckle up. And so Walmart launched the program with Racial Equity Institute in 2018 and has trained more than 1,000 employees on the core principles of critical race theory, including intersectionality, internalized racial oppression, and white anti-racist development. So here's some of the documents right here that they got. Like, this is a welcome message, Global Office of Culture, Diversity, and Inclusion. Okay. And so here it is. This is a scanned, obviously they probably faxed this to him or scanned it to him or took pictures of it and sent it to Christopher Rufo. The Racial Equity Workshop, okay, taught to the Walmart employees. Foundations in Historical and Institutional Racism. So subject matters include race and institutional outcomes, spatial organization of race and poverty, power brokers and institutions. So they've got all the lingo there that makes it sound credible, okay? But it's not. It's just racism. It's dirty, it's low, it's thuggish. It is just discrimination straight up. You can butter it up with whatever corporate terms or academic terms you want, but it's still ugly. It's still racism. And so the table of contents kind of looked at that a little bit already. Why is it so important to end racism, equality versus equity, the anti-racism legacy, and a little note to it here too. If you are at your work and you hear the term allyship, that should be a red flag for you that they're going to teach you racist principles against white people or even Asians at this point. This is how they're going down this road. So anyways, like Racial Equity Institute is committed to bringing awareness and analysis to the root causes of disparities to create racially equitable systems. Okay, let's move on. So you get the point. And this is part of their racial program with the Racial Equity Institute in 2018. The program begins with the claim that the United States is a white supremacy system designed by white Europeans for maintaining white skin access to power and privilege. Whites are thus subjected to racist conditioning that indoctrinates them into white supremacy. Interesting how skin color takes precedence over anything else. That tips me off that this stems from Marxism, because Marxism in the United States has come. They tried to do class division. It didn't work very well. So they honed in, communists throughout the 20th century honed in on, but classism doesn't really work like it did in the Soviet Union. what would work in the United States. Let's open up race and let's tap into that. And it's worked very well, dividing and pitting people against one another. And so you can see they keep saying white, 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 white. Okay, sounds pretty racist to me. In the effort to make it sound like it has a cloak of, oh no, we're just being equitable, it sure sounds like the target is white people or people with light skin or white skin. That's how shallow this whole thing is. And it really is a quest for power. It sounds like it. So, of course, race, definitions of race, racism. Race can be defined as blah, 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 blah. Maintaining white skin access to power and privilege. And in the racism definition, it says it is a white supremacy system supported by an all-class collaboration called white, created to end cross-racial liberty. Yep. So, let's see. Yet we all, white people and people of color, are harmed by racialized conditioning. Okay, the stress, oppression, and internalized inferiority experienced by people of color have had devastating effects. Number 4, discussions about racist conditioning and internalized racial oppression can be effective in healing when undertaken in affinity groups or caucuses that are organized by race. People of color, now look at this phrase right here, these discussions can be effective in healing. Okay, but make no mistake, this is the cloak they're putting it under. They're putting it under a cloak of compassion and victimization, but at the same time, they're discriminating against another race of people. This is the problem. This is why they're trying to be deceptive. Deception is their big weapon. And at the same time, they are violating human rights by saying white people are bad. Okay, people with white skin color are bad. Okay, or inherently bad. And so in number 5 here, I'll just say it says the construction of race has continued through U.S. history and has been central to U.S. economic development, including the development of wealth and power, as we have exploited those not classified as white in order to advance agriculture, ranching, railroads, mining, manufacturing. The story of race is the story of labor. Does that not sound like communism right there? So you can see Marxist principles actually coming through in that phrase right there. Because Marx really did think that everything could be viewed through the lens of economics. He got rid of God. He just basically says that everything in life can be viewed through, and economics, they are a significant part of the human existence. They are not everything, though. And that's where he screwed up big time. And so you can see this kind of communist lexicon coming through here. In order to advance agriculture, ranching, railroads, manufacturing, the story of race is the story of labor. We have let folks into the family of white as we need their electoral influence and no longer need to exploit their labor. Okay, so you get the point. The Wal-Mart program claims that whites are inherently guilty of white privilege and internalized racial superiority, or the belief that one's comfort, wealth, privilege, and success has been earned by merits and hard work rather than through the benefits of systemic racism. So I'll just show you the context here. I won't read everything. But you can see, like, it says, granted white privilege affecting white people, an invisible knapsack of special provisions and blank checks. Peggy McIntosh, the default, the norm, to be white in America is not have to think about it. We can choose to avoid the impact of racism without penalty. Okay, and then in another segment here of what looks like kind of a dry outline, but it's pretty nasty stuff. Number 2, internalized racial oppression. Internalized racial superiority among white people is manifested in multiple ways, but are not limited to seeing white standards and norms as universal. Assuming that one's comfort, wealth, success, and privilege has been earned by merits and hard work, individualism and competition, distancing, perfectionism, and binary either-or thinking. Okay. So Wal-Mart argues that white supremacy culture can be summarized in a list of qualities including individualism, Okay, that's considered white supremacy, that's white supremacy. White supremacy culture is individualism, objectivity, paternalism, defensiveness, power hoarding, right to comfort, the worship of the written word, which are damaging to people of color. And you can see this is, again, I'm going to say it again, and I'll stick with it because this is a very important crux of Marxism, is religion, get rid of religion. Communism, Marxism, it will not succeed unless you completely abolish religion. And so they're saying worship of the written word. Okay, so this is, remember, this is the workplace. This is where people go to just do a job like stock shelves, okay, or manage a store. And they're getting a lecture on how religion, you see how they're inserting that here? It's pretty obvious how religion is the problem for people of color. We should stop worshiping the written word. Okay, power hoarding, defensiveness. And I kind of look at this and go, well, this is bizarre because, let me go here and let's look at this. Oh yeah, this is so bizarre because like individualism, I think that to me just, it appears that individualism seems to just know no skin color boundaries. I think people are very proud of their individualism. I think that's essential to knowing who you are. And I believe this is an effort to distort, remember, to distort individualism, because one thing leftists hate, Marxism, communists, same group, one thing they hate is the individual. They do not like that people put value on individualism, that you think for yourself, that you do self-reflection. They believe in the collective. They want to paint every group as a monolith only. Because if they are forced to view people as individuals, then they start to have to put value. That inherently says, but they have value. Okay, this person at the laundromat doing their laundry, that person has value. They don't seek that. This goes beyond race, because that's not the point. The point is to divide people, but in the end, suppress all people. Okay? And through division, Marxism succeeds. Marxism, the crux of it is to pit people against each other, pit people against the oppressor and the oppressed. If it does not succeed in that matter of pitting people against each other based on splitting hairs or any little difference between people or individuals, then they haven't succeeded. And that's the success of it. And that's where they leverage their power over people. When they can get people to be pitted against each other, then Marxism has power over all of those people. So they're kind of, I believe they're taking things that are actually positives about human beings. Objectivity, the ability to apply the scientific method, to apply kind of a neutral stance and look at both sides. I think that's a good thing. And that to me says, isn't that open-mindedness though? Isn't that critical thinking? And individualism, I don't see where the problem is. Defensiveness, well, then that excludes you too. That excludes anybody who fits into the BIPOC group of people. Because who hasn't been defensive in their life? Power hoarding, that seems like a human characteristic. Is power hoarding good? No, I don't believe people who try to hoard power are intent on doing good things. But that seems to be a characteristic of just human nature. It's like that scripture where, they were like, well, point out the sinner. And Jesus basically says, let he who is free of sin cast the first stone. Okay? In this example of they wanted to stone this person. And he's like, well, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And nobody did, because they all knew deep in their hearts they all had sinned. You know, so this seems to be like they're pointing out characteristics that are just human nature. Because I'm like, the racist part of this is saying that basically people of color, people who are black or whatever, don't exhibit human characteristics. These are only exhibited by white people. And I believe that's racism also against black people too, because you're basically eliminating them from the human experience. And who said communism was ever really about equality or equity? It's really about, like Animal Farm, it's about power over others. Okay, and the worship of the written word, which are damaging to people of color. Okay, so I've made my point. Walmart tells minority employees that they suffer. Okay, they're not telling them how to think. They're telling them what to think. Okay, they tell minority employees that they suffer from constructed racist oppression and internalized racial inferiority with internal messages such as, we believe there is something wrong with being a person of color and we have a sense of limited possibility. Well, how do you even have some type of hierarchical managerial structure when you're pitting people against each other at work all the time too? When you're not putting them on the same plane, it's just stupid. It really is actually quite stupid. Constructed racist oppression, in parentheses, affecting people of color, penetrates every aspect of our personal, institutional, and cultural life, sees a person of color only as a member of group, not as an individual. But the funny thing is the people I see doing that the most are lefties. People on the left, they seem to view people through this lens only. Seeing a person of color as only a member of a group, not as an individual. Now, they just contradicted themselves, right? Because they just said in the previous post that I read, they just said individualism was a trait of white supremacist culture. But here they contradict themselves by saying, sees a person of color only as a member of a group, not as an individual. So what do you want? You dissed individualism as a white supremacy type trait. And then here you're saying that there's more value, there is value in viewing people as an individual. Sees a person of color only as a member of a group, not as an individual. So what the hell do you want? Do you see why this type of theory does not make sense? Because it is absolutely illogical. And it actually contradicts itself. Critical race theory is a series of self-contradictions, and this is one of them right here. They're saying sees only a person of color only as a member of a group, not as an individual, as if the individual is valuable and has value. That's what they're saying. But in the previous post, they just said the individualism, or looking at people as individuals, that was a white supremacist trait. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It literally is just stupid. Oh my gosh. Internalized racial inferiority. It says here, we believe there is something wrong with being a person of color. So the beliefs that you have if you're a person of color. We have lowered self-esteem, sense of inferiority. Oh, I can't speak today. And wrongness. We have lowered expectations, limited sense of potential for self. Here's the thing. But yet, for years, these same people, they are all about affirmative action. And then they say we have lowered expectations and limited sense of potential for self. Affirmative action, which these people supported, these same people pushing this garbage, is something that I believe lowers people's expectations of themselves. And it gives people a limited sense of potential for themselves. Because I've heard this question arise where people go, okay, did I get this job because I was black, or did I get my job because I'm really good at it? you know? And are other people looking at me that way? Are they saying, oh, that's an affirmative action hire? So these same people who love affirmative action, they're the ones saying this. They just wrote this. So it's just ridiculous. Do you see what I mean? Critical race theory is a series of contradictions. Furthermore, Wal-Mart tells minorities that they are programmed to believe the quote-unquote myths promoted by a racist system and develop feelings of self-hate, anger, rage, and ethnocentrism, and are forced to forget, lie, and stop feeling in order to secure basic survival. Okay, so internalized racist depression manifests itself as self-doubt, distancing from other people of color, self-hate, anger. Where's the studies backing this up? Where are the solid studies backing this up? There could be something, but I really wonder about how thorough were these studies done. But again, remember, objectivity, they already dissed on objectivity as a white supremacist trait. Okay? So how can you, so it's like you do these studies and you come up with this critical race theory, but at the same time, you're dissing on objectivity. But to do a study or a survey or a demographic like study of a population group, it takes objectivity. And the only person I've seen, one of the few, because it takes a gut, is that guy. I don't remember his name. He's a black dude, and he showed up in an interview with Barry Weiss, and he's that professor who said, okay, so I decided to do a study on how many cases of police brutality and murder there are in the United States. And I did the data. I ran the data. I ran it. I washed it. I put it through the ringer. And it came out different. It came out different than what I was hearing. The numbers, they were different. And I told the people in my department, I said, thing is police brutality is nowhere near the numbers that are being projected in like social media and by like journalists, left-wing journalists and stuff like that. And they basically banished him. I wish I could remember that guy's name. He's actually pretty cool. But he said, here's the problem. As a black man, he said, I wanted it to be true. I wanted that confirmation bias to be true. But after doing all this research and data, it just wasn't. And he's one of those few that stuck to the truth. One of those few academics who said, no, I can't stand by this. I have to stand by the truth. He had to get protection and 24-hour police protection at his home because people, now I suspect people in the academic community too, were threatening his life. And he has a little baby. So anyway, that's an anecdotal thing, but I highly recommend the interview if I can find it. It was with Barry Weiss. So look up her name, and it's on police statistics and how I forget his name. Anyway, cool guy. So I digress. The solution, according to Wal-Mart, to all of this white supremacy is to encourage whites to participate in white anti-racist development, accept their quote-unquote guilt and shame, adopt the idea that white is not right, acknowledge their racism, and move toward collective action whereby white can do right. Okay, so you get the point. So it's basically just this column. Guilt and shame, denial and defensiveness, be like me, what are you, I'm normal, community of resistance, okay? So that's for white people. And here's to end it here, Christopher Rufo ends it by saying, the Wal-Mart program is a study in hypocrisy. White male CEO Doug McMillan rakes in $22 million a year while lecturing his hourly wage employees on their quote-unquote internalized racial superiority and internalized racial inferiority. God, this is just full of contradictions and massive hypocrisy. Remember, jokers like this piece of shite right here, no, this sweet person who's a child of God, but the damage that these people are doing, it makes me angry. And it's the damage of pitting people against one another. Simply because you said that you're involved in allyship. Remember that word. That's the new, that's another word for like DEI, okay? So beware of that one. So this guy who rakes in $22 million a year, this white dude, is sitting there pushing this stuff that is inherently divisive. I don't believe that the end result of this will bring any peace to anybody or will make it a stronger company. And I don't think Walmart really cares about being as strong a company at this point. I believe they're going for the money. And right now, the money in the grift is in DEI programs, critical race theory, anti-whiteism. There's money. And so I believe that there's less of a true commitment. And because look, this guy's basically hiring these dudes to come in, a white dude, who's the head guy. Okay, he's the boss. He's supposed to be the oppressor, right? He's having these dudes come in and give these lectures on anti-whiteism. And I wonder if it's a deflection too. I just suspect that it might be a bit of a deflection here to keep people's eyes off of the fact that these are a bunch of white guys here that are pushing this stuff, so that they can seem like the good guys. Remember, like philanthropy, that was invented back in the days of Dale Carnegie and big banks back in the early 1900s, I think, late 1800s, because so many people hated big banks, they said, hey, give a little money to some charity and stuff like that so that people won't hate you so much. And we can continue to do our crappy, shitty stuff to people, like install the Federal Reserve Bank and screw people over. So this will deflect and this will distract them. So this dude right here, and then, a low hourly wage worker who's getting screwed by this guy, thinking that his CEO is just this virtuous, self-deprecating white man. But really, I go, yeah, but you're making $22 million a year, and this poor shit right here, he's making dirt. So it's full of contradictions. The formula of woke capital is clear, and I think that's a great description. Woke capital. American executives, the most privileged people on the planet, can collect accolades and social status by pledging allegiance to DEI and telling workers they're racist oppressors. Read the full story in the City Journal. This is interesting. I want to just see a few comments and then I will end this. What people have said about this guy, the CEO of Walmart. Somebody said, slam your employees, slam your customers, pocket $22 million per year. Good work if you can get it. Sam Walton is rolling in his grave. Exactly. Sam Walton was actually a decent human being. I think he was. The guy who founded Walmart. But boy, his kids got a hold of Walmart and they just turned nasty, And let's see here. Another comment is, all right, let me just do this real quick. Another comment is, let's see, of course, woke old white male CEOs never lead by example, giving up their own power to a black or female replacement, to a disabled black trans lesbian. That is such a good point. I'm like sitting here going, well, if you're so into this anti-whiteism and anti-white supremacy stuff, and you're hiring these consultants to come in and preach this, because it really is preaching, folks. This is a religious cult. Why don't you just give up your job then? Give up your job and give it to, like they say here, a disabled black trans lesbian. Because that, according to the Wheel of Privilege, which you saw in my previous video about Google, they showed this Wheel of Privilege. The marginalized were right on the outside, the farthest away from the centers of power. So if you want true equity, give up your CEO position to a disabled black trans lesbian. I think that is so awesome. So rich people, let's see, thanks to his training, we know he didn't earn his high salary, but instead acquired it illicitly via white supremacy. Obviously, he needs to pay up and distribute his wealth amongst his hourly minority employees. Yeah, if you are going to have this stuff preached in your halls of Walmart, then you need to show that you're actually living it. There is no doubting the wage gap and how vast it is from the hourly wage of the CEO, but there is also no doubt that there is an incredibly long history of white landed male governing in the United States. Now, that I can agree with to a degree, but I also, well, that is true, but I don't believe in the division that this is causing. I don't believe that preaching this ideology, is it going to make us better? Is it going to lead to a greater country, or is it going to dissolve bonds of trust and community between people? By resurrecting this all the time. Okay? And despicable propaganda, Walmart. We even had jokes about this way before it went mainstream about people who got super woke. Well, yeah. That's true. Anyway, yeah, somebody said he looks pretty white to me. Anyway, so just tell me what you think. Let me know in the comments. I think it's interesting. There are definitely now white supremacy. Has it existed? Does it still exist? Yes, I believe there are some that exist. Black supremacy, does it exist? Yes, it does. Any color, just choose whatever. Are there good people among groups of ethnicities? Yes. Are there crummy people? Of course there are. But I guess what I'm saying is what they're preaching at this, like Walmart, you cannot go all full on monolith and paint everybody with the same brush. You just can't. That's impossible to do. It's fun to dream of. I'm sure it's a morbid fantasy of some people, but it just logically, doesn't make sense. And here's what you got to ask yourself is, okay, if we incorporate this, is it going to be sustainable and will it lead to a better world? I don't believe it will be, because it's all about causing and creating more division. Okay. And so anyway, let me know what you think, and put a like on the video if you like it, and please subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.